Hi everyone, delonewolf here, back with some more EVE Online news. I can announce some more rebalancing efforts that CCP Rise is going to try and implement for Odyssey patch 1.1. And it looks like he's really getting into his stride, because this time he's tackling the hacks and some of the medium weapons. So I think this is actually pretty important for the traders, because hacks are used quite often by big 0-0 empires, and this rebalancing could change things up a little bit, thus meaning some nice market opportunities. So let's get right in there, and we have to start with the sacrilege. I'll go over the most important changes that are posted there, and you'll be able to see the detail on the screen. So for the sacrilege, the highlights here would be the increased drone bay, increased power grid, and the addition of heavy missile launchers to the cruiser damage bonus. Hopefully the result is a ship that can more comfortably fulfill its heavy tackle or utility hack role without sacrificing quite as much as it used to when compared to combat battlecruisers or other hacks. We concede that the cap recharge bonus is a bit strange, indeed that's a bit of an outlier, but feel the ship actually doesn't need another standard bonus like damage application or range to make it work. So really interesting, and sounds like a nice buff for the sacrilege. Next up, the zealot. And the zealot is arguably the most functional current hack in the entire group, and so it gets the least changes. It's very minor if you look at the details. A little less shields, just -4 on 980, a little bit more mobility, +1 to its maximum velocity, sensor radar strength +1, but that's really all. So the zealot, which is already considered to be a very strong hack, won't change very much. Next up we have the Cerberus. The biggest changes here is the addition of a 6th launcher. That's not insignificant, a 6th high slot with a launcher in there. Also gets a huge max velocity boost, so that it can actually kite some to take advantage of the great missile range. So if we have a quick look at the details on that, we can see that it still has 6 highs, 5 mediums and 4 lows. But it gets an additional launcher, thus meaning that it can now swap the utility high for extra damage, which is pretty good. And the mobility, the maximum velocity goes to 205 + 30, so that's indeed not an insignificant increase in speed for the Cerberus. Next up we have the Eagle. The Eagle will be a lot better because of the rail change alone, so we'll see that later on. But we've also increased its power grid and replaced the utility high with an extra mid slot. So yeah, the railguns are getting changed quite a bit, so this could help the Eagle out already. Increased power grid and replaced the utility high with an extra mid slot. Let's have a quick look at that. So 5 high slots now, -1, but 6 mid slots +1. That's really not bad. You can put quite a shield tank in that, or just add some extra utility. That sounds pretty interesting. And increased power grid, let's have a quick look if I can find that on the overview. Oh yeah, power grid to 950 + 75, so that's not bad either. Next up we have the Demos. Like the Thorax, the Demos now has 4 mids and gives up the extra high. It also goes faster and aligns faster. I think a lot of Gallente pilots will be very happy with that. Finally the Demos gets 4 mid slots, which I mean 3 was really low for a hack, and this could make it quite a lot more useful for some 0-0 hack doctrines. It does lose 1 high slot because of that, but basically tries to bring it in line a little bit with what they changed in the Thorax as well. Power grid +40, so that's actually a decent amount of extra power grid there as well. And speed to 20 + 12, that's decent. Not too much, I would say, but also its agility, it's 0.475, so probably a little bit better, and the align time has been decreased as well. So yeah, the Demos looks like it's going to be a bit faster, and finally have an extra mid slot, which could increase its utility. Very nice. Next up, my all-time favorite, my personal favorite, the Ishtar. So we are replacing the medium hybrid damage bonus with a drone bonus and removing one high slot to put its total one below the rest of the class, as is standard for drone focused ships. So for 0-0 fleet doctrines, I don't think this change is that good, because they aren't really changing anything to the fittings of the Ishtar, which is really its weak point. 700 power grid, 285 CPU. That's not that much compared to the Demos, which has more than 1000 power grid. That's quite significant. 300 less, so that's not nothing. But of course, for exploration Ishtar, this is really great. So we'll get 10% bonus to drone tracking and optimal range, instead of the 5% bonus to medium hybrid turret damage. I mean, this is going to make your sentries in huge DPS monsters that can track frigates without any problems. From time to time I have trouble downing an individual or fast frigate in some of those exploration sites, but with this change it's going to be a piece of cake. Does lose a high slot, but I'm actually okay with that. Basically that means you drop all the guns, just put a salvager, a cloak, maybe a NOS, and a probe launcher in that, but this is actually a decent buff to the exploration Ishtar that I'm using. Pretty interesting. Next up, the Vagabond. Like with the Stabber, we are rolling the max velocity bonus into the base stats and then replacing it with a shield boost bonus. This was a nice racial continuity and supports a playstyle that has been emerging for the Vagabond anyways. As a close range active brawler, please keep in mind that it can still be used exactly the same way that it always has been, with virtually no change in performance. So that's pretty interesting. I'm not that experienced with the Minmatar hacks, but it will basically get more velocity as its base stat, and then a 7.5% bonus to shield boost amount, which I think is not insignificant, and it could indeed make shield tanked Vagabonds a bit more viable. Really interesting. Next up, the Munin. The Munin will lose one of its highs and gain a low, which should fit its role as a long-range platform extremely well. It also gains a little speed. So yeah, that one goes to 6 highs -1, 3 mids and 6 lows +1. So that's pretty good, you know, you could definitely do something with that. And 6 lows, that's a decent amount. 3 mids, that's actually not much, but if you can armor tank that Munin, that should still be okay for a mid slot utility, I think. And a little bit more mobility, yeah, max velocity plus 14 to 210, and the rest doesn't really change. So yeah, just a little bit faster, but pretty interesting as well, I think. Overall, not a very big buffs, but this was announced before apparently by CCP Rise, that the Tech 2 ships would not gain as much of a buff as some of the Tech 1s received in their rebalancing passes. But I forgot to mention, actually, probably one of the most important one is that all hacks across the board will get a 50% reduction in signature radius penalty for micro-op drives. So basically the penalty of using the MWD is going to be cut in half for the hacks, which is yeah, really good, and it might just make the micro-op driving hacks more useful in some instances. This is definitely a buff for hacks being used in fleet doctrines. Anyways, apart from the hack rebalancing, there is, which might actually be even more important than the hack rebalancing itself, some medium weapon rebalancing coming as well, which should also come for Odyssey 1.1. The biggest change, the medium railguns, all sizes and metas will gain a 15% rate of fire, 15% damage multiplier, and it will decrease -15% tracking speed. So a lot of damage increase there for the medium rails, pretty interesting. Next up, medium beams, plus 25% damage multiplier. That's a huge leap right there. Although you could say that the medium rails get 30% because of plus 15 rate of fire and plus 15% damage multiplier, 25% for the medium beams, not bad at all, and they only get a 10% tracking speed reduction to compensate a little bit for that damage increase. And finally we'll have the medium artillery plus 10% rate of fire. I guess they don't want to increase the alpha too much for the ganking, but they do want to give it a buff, so 10% increase in rate of fire, which should also increase your DPS by 10%, and a 5% reduction of tracking. It's a decent buff for medium artillery, just not as big as the medium rails or the medium beam buff, but of course its penalty in tracking has been reduced as well. The basic idea is that we're increasing damage by quite a lot for all medium long range turrets, while also lowering their tracking a little bit. So that's indeed exactly what's happening there. Really interesting changes that might just shake up the heavy assault cruiser doctrine for 0-0 fleet warfare, and this could have a pretty big impact on the market for those ships and thus mean some nice opportunities for traders. Anyways, that's it for this quick look at some more Odyssey 1.1 rebalancing. I'll see you all next time.